September 3rd, 2008. A 47-year-old woman from London hikes the South Kaibab Trail into the Grand Canyon and back out. 10 kilometers, 900 meters of elevation, down and then up in 5 hours. She drinks water the whole way. A lot of it. She finishes the hike. She collapses on the rim. Within 24 hours, she is dead. Not from heat stroke, not from a fall. From water. Her own body flooded with more fluid than her kidneys could process, swelling her brain until it stopped working. She did the one thing every safety brochure tells you to do. It killed her. Now here's the part that should bother you. The Grand Canyon sees somewhere between 10 and 17 deaths like this every single year. Park officials don't call that a crisis. They call it a normal season. This channel exists to explain why. Not with ghost stories, not with legend, with the actual record, the National Park Service's own statements, the peer-reviewed medical literature, the search and rescue logs. If you want the real mechanisms behind the places that keep killing people, subscribe, because we're about to spend the next 25 minutes taking this canyon apart. By the end, you'll know what actually kills people here. And it is almost never the thing they were afraid of when they parked the car. Start with the visitors. Nearly 5 million people walk up to this rim every year. Almost 5 million people photograph the same view, buy the same postcard, feel the same version of awe. Out of those 5 million, somewhere between 10 and 17 die. Every year, not most years. Every year. That's not an accident cluster. That's a rate. A quiet, repeating certainty buried inside a number so large it stops feeling like people at all. And it isn't just the deaths. More than 250 search and rescue operations happen here in a typical year, and in some tallies that figure runs past 300, one park alone accounting for more rescue callouts than almost any other unit in the entire national park system. Across the whole system, search and rescue operations cost more than $21 million over just 5 recent years, and Grand Canyon sits at the very top of that list for volume. Think about what has to be true for a number like that to hold steady. Not one bad summer, not one unlucky crowd. A consistent, repeatable output year after year, regardless of who specifically walks up to the edge on any given morning. This is not bad luck. This is a machine that produces the same outcome, at roughly the same scale, whether the visitors that year are careful or careless, experienced or brand new to hiking altogether. The question isn't whether it will happen again this year. It's already happening right now while you watch this. The real question is why the machine works the way it does, and why almost nobody sees it coming until they're already inside it. Here's what almost nobody accounts for. Most mountains are honest. You climb, you tire, your body tells you to turn around, and by the time you're exhausted, you're already heading back down towards safety. The Grand Canyon does the opposite. You start at the rim, on pavement, past gift shops and shuttle stops, and the trail goes down. Down is easy. Down doesn't ask anything of your legs or your lungs. Your body isn't tired. Your brain concludes this must be fine. Then you turn around. Now every meter you walk downhill for free, you have to buy back uphill in rising heat with less water than you started with. The canyon doesn't spend its danger on the way in. It saves it for the way out, and by then, the version of you making decisions is not the same version that set off that morning. I keep coming back to this. The canyon is built to be entered easy and exited hard. Paved paths, mile markers, a gift shop within sight of the trailhead. Every visible signal tells you this is managed, supervised, safe. None of those signals describe what happens to your body 2,000 feet below the rim, where the temperature can run 20-30 degrees hotter than where you parked the car. Your senses are reading the rim. Your risk lives in the canyon. That gap between how safe this place looks stepping onto it and how unforgiving it becomes stepping back out of it is the whole story. Every single cause of death you're about to hear about is a version of that same trap, dressed differently. And in a minute, we're going to talk about what actually springs it first. Here's what the data actually says. Ask a tourist standing at the rim what kills people here, and almost everyone gives the same answer: falling. A missed step, a bad photo, a 2,000-foot drop. It's the fear the guardrails are built for. It is not the leading cause of death. According to the park's own preventive search and rescue coordinator, the most common cause of death at the Grand Canyon is cardiac arrest. Not a fall. A heart stopping. Here's the mechanism, and it's worth sitting with, because it explains something almost nobody thinks about before a hike. When you exert yourself in heat, your muscles generate heat internally at rates 15 to 18 times your resting output, and that heat gets carried by your blood back toward your core. Your heart is already working overtime to pump blood out to your skin to cool you down. At the same moment, it's also supplying oxygen to muscles working harder than they have in months. Add dehydration, which shrinks your circulating blood volume, and the heart is suddenly running two competing jobs with less to work with. In a body carrying any underlying vulnerability, that combination is enough to trigger an abnormal rhythm, a drop in output, a full stop. Nobody packs for their own heart. People pack sunscreen and snacks and extra water. Almost nobody hikes into a canyon thinking about their cardiovascular system because a heart attack doesn't look like canyon danger. It looks like something that happens in a hospital decades from now. Here, it can happen on a switchback at noon in July. Now, I have to be honest about something because a channel built on the record has to include the parts of the record that complicate the story. An older count of Grand Canyon deaths, running through 2017 and drawn from the definitive fatality book on this park, found a different leading category entirely: aircraft. Helicopter and small plane crashes tied to roughly 2 commercial tour flights a minute crossing the canyon, and turbulence created when hot air rising off the canyon floor collides with cooler air over the plateau above. Both of these can be true at once from different slices of the record. The park's most recent public statements point to cardiac arrest. The deepest historical count points to aviation. What both versions tell you is the same underlying thing. The fall you're afraid of is not the threat doing the most killing. The real threat is something you brought with you in your own chest, or something flying over your head, not something waiting quietly at the edge of the trail. So if it isn't the heart alone, what else is doing the killing? Start with heat itself in its 2 most dangerous forms, because they are opposites and mistaking one for the other can be fatal on its own. The first is heat stroke. Your core temperature climbs past 40 degrees Celsius, your central nervous system starts to fail, and if you aren't cooled fast, the fatality rate can run past 50%. This isn't rare exhaustion, it's organ damage in progress. The second is the one almost nobody expects: hyponatremia. You get it from drinking too much water. This is the mechanism behind the woman on the South Kaibab Trail. Her body, under exertion and heat stress, released a hormone that told her kidneys to hold onto fluid instead of releasing it. She kept drinking, doing exactly what every hiking guide tells you to do, and the sodium in her blood kept getting diluted until her brain began to swell inside her skull. By the time she collapsed on the rim, it was already too late. She was treated with IV fluids on the way to the hospital, the standard response to dehydration, and the opposite of what her body actually needed. She never regained consciousness. Here's what's cruel about this one. The field treatment for hyponatremia is fluid restriction. The field treatment for heat exhaustion is fluid intake. From the outside, the two conditions look almost identical, and they demand opposite responses. Get it wrong, and the well-intentioned fix accelerates the failure instead of stopping it. That's why this cause is so underestimated. Nobody fears their own water bottle. It doesn't fit anyone's picture of danger, and yet, she did nothing reckless. She hiked a marked popular trail. She hydrated constantly, more than most people would think to. It still ended in a hospital, unconscious, less than a day after she finished the hike she'd already survived. Now the one everyone already fears: falling. Falls are the second most common recorded cause of death in the park. On average, 2 to 3 people die every year from falling over the rim itself. That number sounds almost reassuring, next to cardiac arrest and heat. It isn't rare. It's just smaller than what most people imagine when they picture this place. The mechanism here needs no biology lesson. Over 2,000 miles of unrailed ledge line both rims of this canyon, because a barrier system covering that much terrain isn't practical, and because the park is built to stay as close to natural as it can manage. The drop is real and it does not forgive a lost foothold. What actually triggers most of these falls isn't recklessness. It's a moment. Someone steps past a paved path for a better photo. Someone leans out over an edge that looks solid and isn't. In a single spring, 3 separate people died this way within a few weeks of each other. Each one taking a photograph, each one losing their footing on ground that felt stable a second before it wasn't. This is the one cause where fear and reality are almost matched, except in scale. Tourists treat falling as the primary danger of this place, and they're not wrong that it's real and serious and unforgiving. They're just wrong about the ranking. It's still outranked by what's happening quietly inside people's chests and inside their own water bottles. If you've ever pushed past a warning sign because you felt fine in the moment, tell me in the comments. And if this is making you rethink a trip you already have planned, that's the point. So drop a like before we keep going. Because the part most people get wrong is still ahead. Here's the one that can kill you without a single drop of rain falling where you're standing. Flash floods. Between 2010 and 2020, 22 people died on Colorado River trips through the canyon out of 330,000 river runners. Drownings, medical events, falls, all counted together. And in recent years, some of the deadliest single stretches in the canyon's record have been driven by flash flooding. The physics is almost unfair. Water weighs about 62 pounds per cubic foot. Moving fast, even 6 inches of it can knock an adult off their feet. A foot of it can carry away a small car. And the storm that creates that wall of water can be happening 10 or 20 miles away, on a plateau you can't see from where you're standing, under a sky that's still blue directly over your head. This is exactly what happened to Chenoa Nickerson, a 33-year-old woman from Gilbert, Arizona. In August 2024, she was swept into Havasu Creek during a flash flood, roughly half a mile above where the creek meets the Colorado River. She wasn't wearing a life jacket. The National Weather Service recorded 1 to 2 inches of rain falling in that watershed in under 90 minutes, enough to turn a creek into a wall of moving water within the hour. Her husband was pulled from the water by a group of rafters. She wasn't found for 3 days. When she was finally recovered, she was more than 30 kilometers downstream, found by a commercial river trip passing through. The storm that killed her never touched the sky above her. That's what makes this mechanism so hard to prepare for. You cannot watch for a threat you cannot see coming, in a canyon shaped specifically to funnel that threat directly toward wherever you happen to be standing. And then there's the one nobody thinks to be afraid of at all: the flight over the canyon. Roughly 2 commercial tour flights cross this canyon every single minute. That volume, combined with the canyon's own weather, creates conditions most passengers never think about. Hot air rises off the canyon floor and collides with cooler air over the plateau above, generating turbulence that can catch even experienced pilots by surprise. Most of the aircraft accidents recorded here involve tour operators, not the National Park Service itself, which hasn't had an aerial accident in more than 4 decades. An older count of this canyon's deaths, running through 2017, found aircraft crashes outranking every other single category, even after removing one especially large crash from the total. Think about what that means for how you'd assess risk before a trip like this. Hiking below the rim, at least, feels like an active choice. You're doing something and you know it. Boarding a helicopter feels like the passive, safe way to see the same thing. Sold as a shortcut around the exertion and the heat, no water bottle required. The record doesn't support treating it that way. The sky over this canyon has its own physics, generated by the canyon itself, and its own body count, built almost entirely from an experience marketed as the risk-free option. None of these causes operate alone. That's the part that gets lost when you rank them one at a time. Heat degrades your circulation and your judgment at the same moment your body needs both intact. Dehydration strains your heart while it's also pushing you to drink in a way that can tip into hyponatremia. Fatigue on the climb back out puts you closer to the same unstable ground where a lost foothold becomes a fall. A storm you can't see adds a threat that has nothing to do with any of the others, arriving exactly when you're least equipped to react to it. They don't add up. Here's the thing. They stack. This is the canyon, entered easy and exited hard, doing the same thing at every scale, in every mechanism. The trail invites you down without asking anything of you. The heat invites you to drink without warning you it can go too far in the other direction. The paved rim invites you to lean for a photo without telling you the ledge doesn't care how many people took the same photo before you. Every one of these has the identical shape, something that looks manageable on the way in and only reveals its true cost on the way out once your margin for error is already gone. That's not 5 separate dangers. That's one operating principle applied 5 different ways. Here's the part that should bother you most, because it isn't about the canyon at all. It's about your own brain. A rise in temperature of just 4 degrees, the kind you describe as merely uncomfortable, is enough to produce roughly a 10% drop in memory, reaction time, and judgment on cognitive tests. You won't feel impaired, you'll feel a little warm. But the part of your brain responsible for deciding whether to turn around is already operating at a measurable deficit, and it happens before you notice anything is wrong. That's the trap inside the trap. The one decision that could save you, turn back now, has to be made by a mind that heat has already started to degrade at exactly the moment that decision matters most. Then there's the shape of the trail itself, working against you psychologically as much as physically. Most mountains wear hikers down on the way up, so turning back happens naturally before real trouble starts. This canyon reverses that. You go down first while you're fresh, while turning around feels premature, unnecessary, even a little embarrassing in front of the people you came with. By the time your body is telling you this was too far, you're already committed to climbing the same distance back out in worse heat with less water than you had an hour ago. Heat exposure has also been shown to increase risk-taking behavior more generally. Decision-making measurably shifts toward the riskier option under heat stress. And separately, researchers who studied hikers specifically found that how endangered you feel and how endangered you actually are can come apart entirely. People with high subjective risk perception reported more heat stress and thirst without that matching their actual physiological strain. In other words, your gut feeling about your own safety right now on this trail is not a reliable instrument. It's reading your comfort, not your risk. And the paved path under your feet, the shuttle stop behind you, the crowd of people doing the same hike you are, none of it tells you anything about what's happening to your body 2,000 feet down. It just feels like evidence that you're fine. You are the same as everyone else who has ever stood at this rim and felt fine right before things went wrong. And if something does go wrong down there, understand what you're actually asking for. This park logs somewhere around 250 to 310 search and rescue operations every year, more than almost any other unit in the entire national park system. The canyon itself works against every part of that response. It's an inverted mountain. Rescuers have to descend into the heat before they can bring anyone back out of it, across terrain laced with more than 2,000 miles of unrailed ledge, much of it unreachable by any vehicle. Across the national park system as a whole, search and rescue operations cost more than $21 million over a recent 5-year span, and this park sits at the very top of that list for volume. The park now runs a dedicated preventive team specifically because the demand is so constant. In one summer alone, staff engaged more than 117,000 hikers, and over 28,000 of them needed active persuasion to change a plan that rangers had already judged unsafe before it became an emergency call. Here's what that number actually tells you. The park is already intervening on tens of thousands of dangerous decisions every single season, just to keep the rescue numbers where they are. Help, when it's needed, is not instant. It is hours away, moving down the same terrain that's already working against the person who needs it, through the same heat that caused the emergency in the first place. The danger doesn't pause while someone comes for you. It keeps compounding on the same clock. So who actually ends up in these numbers? Across the national park system, men account for 83% of all recorded deaths. Fatalities are spread fairly evenly across adult age groups, with people 65 and older making up the single largest share at 19%. Children make up only about 3%. This is not, broadly, a story about the reckless young or the frail elderly. It's spread across the kind of people who show up to hike a well-known trail on an ordinary weekend, wearing the right shoes, carrying the right amount of water they think they need. Look again at the woman on the South Kaibab Trail. She wasn't a novice. She completed a demanding 10-kilometer round trip, 900 meters of elevation change in 5 hours on a marked corridor trail. She hydrated the entire way, more than most people would think to. she did not die because she was unprepared. She died because she was prepared in exactly the wrong direction, by a margin most people would never think to check in the first place. That's the pattern underneath almost every mechanism in this video. Not recklessness. A slight miscalibration in an environment engineered to punish slight miscalibration more severely than almost anywhere else in the park system. You don't have to be careless to end up in these statistics. You have to be a normal, moderately fit person on an ordinary day who trusted a signal, a paved path, a full water bottle, a clear sky, a body that feels fine, that this particular canyon does not honor the way you'd expect it to. That's the part I can't get past. This isn't a story about other people's mistakes. It's a story about how thin the margin is for people doing almost everything right. The canyon isn't hostile. It doesn't want anything. It has no opinion about the people who fall, collapse, or drown inside it every year. It is simply built to be entered easy and exited hard, and it will keep operating exactly that way whether or not you understand it before you go. For somewhere between 10 and 17 people a year, that indifference is the last thing they ever meet. What stays with me isn't the fall, or the flood, or even the flight overhead. It's the hyponatremia. A woman who did the responsible thing all the way to the end, and it still wasn't enough. So tell me, which mechanism in this video surprised you the most, and which place should we take apart next? If you want the real record behind the places that keep killing people, and not the rage bait version, subscribe. That's what this channel does.